Armin Reed did not plan to insult a queen on his first day in another galaxy. He did not plan to stand inside a golden alien palace surrounded by armored guards with glowing spears. And he definitely did not plan to accidentally propose marriage in front of an entire royal court. He was only a systems engineer from Earth, a quiet man who loved machines more than people. And when the experimental jump engine exploded in a flash of white light, he thought he was going to die. Instead, he woke up lying on a smooth silver floor under a massive glass dome filled with stars that did not belong to his sky. The palace of the Zarethi Empire was silent when he opened his eyes. Tall alien nobles with pale blue skin and sharp silver eyes stared at him as if he was a strange animal. Their armor shimmered like liquid metal. Their voices whispered in a language he could not understand. And at the far end of the hall, sitting on a floating throne of crystal light, was their queen. Queen Vaelira of the Zarethi was not like anything Armin had ever seen. She looked human in shape, but taller, stronger, her presence heavy like gravity itself. Her crown formed from living energy, her eyes glowing faint gold. And when she stood up, the entire court lowered their heads at once. Armin did not lower his head, not because he was brave, but because he did not know he was supposed to. The guards moved first. 3 of them stepped forward and aimed their spears at his chest. Thin beams of red light formed at the tips, ready to fire, and Armin slowly raised his hands, his heart beating so loud he could hear it in his ears. A voice echoed inside the hall, translated by some unseen device. "Identify yourself, lesser being. My name is Armin Reed. I am human. From Earth," he said, try to keep his voice steady. Murmurs filled the hall. The word human clearly meant something to them, but not something good. One of the nobles whispered, "Primitive species," and another said, "Weak flesh creatures." Queen Vaelira stepped down from her throne and walked toward him, each step silent, powerful, controlled. She stopped only a few feet away, close enough for Armin to see the fine silver lines across her skin, like patterns of living light. "You stand in the heart of the Zarethi Empire," she said calmly, "and you do not bow." "I did not know I should," he replied honestly. Some guards tightened their grip on their weapons, expecting anger, expecting punishment. Instead, the queen studied him carefully, not with rage, but with curiosity. Armin's eyes moved nervously. He had never been good at public speaking, never been good at reading dangerous situations, and the silence around him felt like a loaded weapon. Then he made the mistake. He noticed the royal armor she wore, elegant and curved, shaped in a way that was different from Earth designs. And in his panic, trying to sound respectful, trying to say something polite, he spoke without thinking. "Your armor design is very impressive," he began. Then he hesitated, his brain searching for words, and somehow the wrong words came out. "You have beautiful breasts." The hall froze. Every noble gasped at once. Guards activated their weapons fully. Red light flooded the chamber. One spear moved so close to Armin's throat that he felt heat on his skin. He realized immediately that something was very wrong. I meant your armor shape is strong and balanced," he tried to explain, but his voice sounded small compared to the growing tension in the room. One of the high commanders shouted, "He insults the divine form of the queen. Execute him." Armin swallowed hard, thinking this was the fastest death in human history. Then something unexpected happened. Queen Vaelira did not look angry. She did not look embarrassed. She did not look insulted. She smiled. Not a small, polite smile, but a slow, dangerous, thoughtful smile. The entire court went silent again. Even the guards hesitated. She raised her hand slightly, and all weapons powered down instantly. The queen stepped closer, so close that Armin could see the gold glow inside her eyes. And in a calm voice that echoed across the hall, she said, "On Zarethi, to praise the form of a queen in open court is not an insult." The nobles looked confused. She continued, "It is a declaration of desire, and by our ancient law, a male who openly declares admiration before the royal court accepts a bond of union." Armin blinked, not understanding. She tilted her head slightly and said clearly, "You have asked to be my husband." The guard stepped back in shock. Nobles began whispering loudly. Some looked furious, others terrified. Armin's mind went blank. Husband, queen, empire, war. He had only meant to survive the next 5 minutes. I am not prepared for her, he stammered. But Queen Vaelira raised her hand again, silencing the entire chamber. You are human, she said softly, and humans are known for boldness and weakness, courage and fear, and truth without calculation. She turned to the court and declared, I accept his proposal. The words echoed like thunder through the Golden Hall. Armin Reed stood frozen, surrounded by an alien empire that now believed he had just claimed their queen. And far beyond the palace walls, in the dark space between stars, enemy fleets were already watching, waiting for any sign of weakness in the Zarethi throne. What Armin did not know yet was that his accidental compliment would not only change his life, it would decide the fate of 2 civilizations. If you enjoy powerful sci-fi stories like this, gently consider subscribing to this channel, because what happens next will shock the entire galaxy. The royal court did not celebrate the queen's words. It reacted like a battlefield that had just received an unexpected attack. Whispers turned into sharp arguments. Silver-robed nobles stepped forward in protest, and the high commander of the royal guard dropped to one knee but kept his eyes fixed on Armin, as if measuring how quickly he could remove him from existence. Armin stood in the center of the Golden Hall, feeling every stare pressing against him. And for the first time since arriving in this strange empire, he understood something clearly. This was not romance, this was politics. Queen Vaelira turned slowly toward her council, her expression calm, but her voice stronger than before. The ancient law is clear. A public declaration in open court binds the speaker to the throne. A tall elder with glowing white markings across his face stepped forward, his voice shaking with controlled anger. Your Majesty, the law was written for our own kind, not for primitive off-world creatures. Primitive, that word again. Armin felt it hit harder this time. Not because it hurt his pride, but because he realized how little they thought of humanity. Vaelira did not raise her voice. She did not need to. The law does not specify species, she replied. It specifies intent and public declaration. Another noble added quickly. Intent matters. This human did not understand our customs. Then that proves his words were pure. Vaelira answered without hesitation. There was no manipulation, no strategy, only honesty. The court fell silent for a moment, and Armin noticed something strange. The queen was defending him, not as a joke, not as entertainment, but seriously. The high commander rose to his feet, his armor glowing faint red, as if reacting to his anger. Majesty, with respect, the outer systems are already unstable. 3 border colonies report military movements from the Carthane Dominion. They wait for weakness. If they learn the throne is bound to an unknown male from a lesser species, they will see it as insult. The name Carthane Dominion echoed through the chamber, and even Armin could sense that it carried weight. Fear moved across some faces, tension across others. Vaelira walked back toward her throne, but did not sit. She stood tall, hands behind her back, looking not like a ruler under pressure, but like someone calculating many steps ahead. Perhaps, she said slowly, they will see it as weakness. The commander looked almost relieved, thinking she agreed. Or, she continued, they will see it as evolution. Murmurs rose again, louder this time. Armin's mind raced. Evolution? What did she mean by that? He was not a warrior, not a diplomat, just a man who fixed engines and wrote code. One of the younger nobles spoke carefully. Your Majesty, humans are physically inferior, their lifespan short, their bodies fragile, their worlds divided by internal conflict. What advantage could such a species offer the Zarethi throne? It was not said with cruelty, it was said like a fact, and that somehow felt worse. Vaelira turned her gaze toward Armin again, studying him as if he were a puzzle piece others could not see clearly. Tell me, human, she said, if placed in a war you cannot win by strength, what does your kind do? Every eye in the hall shifted to him again. Armin swallowed. This was not a question from curiosity, it was a test. We adapt, he answered quietly at first, then stronger. We survive by thinking differently. When we cannot overpower, we outsmart. When we cannot match strength, we change the rules. Some nobles looked unimpressed, others slightly thoughtful. The commander crossed his arms, bold words from fragile flesh. Armin met his gaze despite fear crawling under his skin. Fragile things break, he said, but fragile things also learn faster because they have to. Silence followed, not mocking this time, but considering. Vaelira's golden eyes seemed brighter now, and for a brief second, Armin saw something deeper there. Not attraction, not amusement, but recognition. She turned back to her council. You fear that binding the throne to a human will show weakness, she said, but our enemies already believe we are predictable, proud, unchanging. She walked down the steps again, her voice gaining power with each word. A union with a human signals unpredictability. It signals that we are willing to break tradition to grow stronger. An elder protested, or it signals desperation. Vaelira stopped in front of him, her presence alone forcing him to lower his head slightly. Desperation is hiding behind pride, she replied calmly. Armin realized then that this decision was not sudden, not emotional. She had been studying humanity, perhaps for years, perhaps secretly. The High Commander spoke again, but this time slower, more careful. Majesty, even if the law binds you, the Council must approve the Union for it to be recognized across the Empire. Vaelira nodded once, then let the Council vote. The air in the chamber grew heavy. This was not just about marriage now. It was about the direction of an empire. Armin felt a strange weight settle on his shoulders. He was no longer just a lost engineer. He was a symbol, and symbols were dangerous. Outside the palace, unseen by those inside, dark ships drifted beyond the outer defense grid of Zarethi. Long, sharp vessels marked with the crest of the Carthane Dominion, their commanders receiving intercepted signals from the royal court, their analysts already whispering the same conclusion. The Zarethi throne is unstable. Back inside the hall, glowing panels rose from the floor before each council member, light waiting for their decision. Vaelira stepped beside Armin, close enough for him to feel the calm strength in her presence. Do not mistake this for kindness, she said softly, so only he could hear. This is survival. Armin glanced at her, heart racing. Then why choose me? Her eyes remained forward as the council prepared to cast their votes. Because, she answered quietly, humans survive where empires fall. The first light on the council floor turned red, then another, then a green. The future of two civilizations now depended on which color would shine the brightest. The council vote did not end in chaos, but it did not end in peace either. The final count stood divided almost perfectly in half, and by ancient imperial rule, when the council cannot reach a strong majority, the throne itself makes the final decision, which meant Queen Vaelira's will would stand. But the fracture inside the empire was now visible to everyone. The nobles left the chamber in cold silence, their robes moving like flowing shadows, and Armin understood something important in that moment. He had not just stepped into a royal marriage. He had stepped into the center of a political storm that was already forming. He was escorted to a private observation chamber high above the capital city, the walls transparent, showing endless towers of silver and light stretching into the horizon. Alien ships moving in organized lines through the sky, energy bridges connecting floating platforms. It was beautiful, powerful, and far beyond anything Earth had built. Yet despite all that strength, he sensed fear. Queen Vaelira entered the chamber alone, without guards this time, which surprised him more than the weapons earlier. You dismissed your protection, Armin said carefully. I do not require protection inside my own palace, she replied, though her tone suggested the statement was no longer completely true. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence was not hostile now, but heavy with unasked questions. You studied humans, Armin said finally, remembering her words in the court. Yes, she answered openly, for 12 of your Earth years. That shocked him more than anything else. Why would a galactic empire study a species that barely left its own solar system? He asked. Vaelira stepped closer to the glass wall, looking down at her capital city. Because weakness that survives is never simple, she said. She raised her hand, and the air in front of them shifted, forming holographic images of Earth's history. Wars, disasters, revolutions, cities rising from ruins, rockets launching into space. Your species is physically inferior to mine, she said calmly. Your bones break easily, your skin tears, your lifespan is short, your bodies require constant care. Armin felt the sting of truth in her words. But, she continued, and her voice changed slightly, now carrying respect. No species in recorded history has adapted as quickly as humans. The hologram shifted to show ancient humans hunting with simple tools, then building ships, then machines, then satellites, then artificial intelligence. You evolved not by strength, but by cooperation, she explained. You survived ice ages, plagues, world wars, and internal division. You fight each other constantly, yet when facing extinction, you unite. Armin watched silently, seeing his own species through alien eyes for the first time. We observed your global conflicts, she said, and we noticed something unusual. Humans do not simply resist oppression. They innovate under pressure. The hologram showed wartime factories producing new technology, small nations defending against stronger invaders using strategy instead of power, engineers solving impossible problems with limited resources. When stronger species conquer, she continued, they rely on dominance. When weaker species are conquered, they rely on intelligence. Armin looked at her carefully. So this marriage is an experiment. Vaelira did not deny it. It is a calculation, she said. The Carthane Dominion believes in brute superiority. They expand by force. They assume that power alone ensures victory. The image changed again, now showing dark, sharp alien warships moving through space, far more aggressive in design than Zarethi vessels. They expect us to respond with tradition and predictable military strength, she said. They do not expect change. Armin felt a strange mixture of pride and pressure building inside him. You think humans are the change, he said quietly. I think humans are unpredictable, she corrected. And unpredictability is power. Before he could respond, an alarm pulsed softly through the chamber, not loud, but urgent. Vaelira turned instantly, her expression shifting from calm to focused command. A guard's voice echoed through the room. Majesty, long-range sensors confirm Carthane scouts entering outer defense range. They're testing response time. Armin's heart tightened. So it begins, he thought. Vaelira dismissed the holograms and looked directly at him. This is why the Council fears you, she said. Your presence changes the pattern, and patterns keep empires stable. Or predictable, Armin added. For the first time since he arrived, Vaelira gave a faint, approving nod. You learn quickly, she said. He stepped closer to the transparent wall, watching distant defense platforms shift into combat position, energy shields activating like glowing domes across the skyline. What do they want? He asked. They want proof that we are divided, she answered, as if summoned by her words. Another signal interrupted the chamber, this time visual, a transmission request bearing the crest of the Carthane Dominion. Vaelira allowed it to project in front of them. A towering alien figure appeared, armored in black plating, eyes burning red, his voice deep and sharp. Queen Vaelira, the figure said, we hear interesting rumors from your court. Armin felt the air grow colder. Rumors are the currency of weak rulers, Vaelira replied calmly. The alien's gaze shifted slightly, noticing Armin standing beside her. And yet, the commander continued slowly. You stand beside a human male in your royal chamber. Silence followed, heavy and dangerous. We wonder, the alien said with a thin smile, has the great Zarethi Empire fallen so low that it seeks strength in primitive flesh? Armin felt anger rise inside him, but he forced himself to stay quiet, watching Vaelira closely. She did not react with rage. She did not defend emotionally. Instead, she stepped slightly closer to Armin, deliberately, visibly. "The Zarethi Empire does not fall," she said evenly. "It evolves." The Carthage commander studied them both for a long moment. "Then we look forward to testing this evolution," he replied before the transmission cut. The chamber returned to silence, but it was not peaceful silence anymore. It was the silence before impact. Vaelira turned to Armin once more, her golden eyes steady. "Now you understand," she said quietly. "Yes," Armin answered, feeling the full weight of what he had stepped into. He was not chosen because he was strong. He was chosen because humans refused to stay weak. And somewhere beyond the stars, an empire built on brute force had just been given a new reason to prepare for war. The night after the Carthage transmission, the palace did not sleep. Defense grids pulsed brighter than usual. Patrol ships moved in tighter circles around the capital, and inside the inner towers, whispers traveled faster than light, some calling Armin a symbol of change, others calling him a mistake that would cost them everything. Armin was given temporary royal quarters high inside the central spire, a room larger than his entire apartment back on Earth, walls made of soft, glowing crystal, a balcony overlooking the endless city of Zarethi. It should have felt like luxury, but it felt like a glass cage. 2 royal guards stood outside his chamber at all times, silent and watchful, their armor reflecting the city lights. They did not speak to him, but they watched him carefully, not with hatred, not with trust either. He stood alone on the balcony, staring at the alien sky filled with unfamiliar stars, trying to process how his life had turned into this. One wrong sentence, one nervous compliment, and now he was tied to an empire on the edge of war. Behind him, the chamber doors slid open quietly. He turned, expecting a servant or a guard, but instead saw Queen Vaelira enter alone again, her royal armor replaced with a lighter ceremonial robe woven from threads of silver light. She looked less like a warrior now and more like something ancient and powerful. "You should not be alone," Armin said instinctively. "I'm never alone," she replied calmly, though there were clearly no guards with her. She stepped onto the balcony beside him, looking down at the city below. "Half the council believes you are an opportunity, the other half believes you are a weakness," she said. "And what do you believe?" he asked quietly. She did not answer immediately, and that silence felt heavier than any insult. Before she could speak, the lights across the balcony flickered once, just for a second, so quick it could have been ignored. But Armin noticed. He had spent years working with unstable energy systems, and small flickers were never random. "Did that happen before?" he asked sharply. Vaelira's eyes narrowed slightly. "No." The flicker came again, longer this time. The city lights below dimmed in one sector, then returned. Armin's instinct screamed. This was not a malfunction. Suddenly, the balcony floor beneath them vibrated faintly, almost like distant thunder. At the far end of the city skyline, a bright flash erupted, not from the sky, but from within the capital itself. An explosion, not large enough to destroy a tower, but precise, controlled. Vaelira's expression hardened instantly. "Internal breach," she said. Before Armin could respond, the glass wall behind them shattered inward in a silent burst, not from sound, but from energy distortion. 3 dark figures phased through the broken space, their armor black and angular, far different from Zarethi design, their weapons thin and curved like blades made of pure shadow. Carthage assassins. They moved with terrifying speed. One lunged directly toward Vaelira without hesitation. Armin did not think. He reacted. He grabbed a nearby metal stand and threw it toward the attacker. It did nothing to harm the armored figure, but it disrupted the movement just enough. "Stay back," one assassin hissed in a distorted voice, ignoring Armin completely as if he were not a threat. That was their mistake. The second assassin aimed a weapon at Vaelira's chest, a pulse forming at its tip, glowing dark red. Armin saw the charge building, saw the pattern of energy focusing, and in that split second his engineer brain understood something critical. The weapon required a stable lock before firing. He jumped between the assassin and the queen, not to block the shot, but to interfere with the targeting field. The weapon discharged, the blast hitting Armin's shoulder instead of Vaelira's heart. Pain exploded through his body. He was thrown backward against the balcony rail, vision blurring, ears ringing. But the shot had been misaligned. The energy scattered instead of penetrating fully. Vaelira moved then, not like a queen, but like a warrior born for battle. Her hand ignited with golden light, forming a blade of pure energy that extended from her palm. She struck the first assassin with precise force, cutting through armor as if it were cloth. The third attacker tried to retreat, activating a phase device to escape, but the palace defense grid reactivated fully at that moment, trapping the assassin mid-shift, freezing him in distorted space. Royal guards flooded into the chamber seconds later, weapons raised. The fight had lasted less than 10 seconds. Armin lay on the balcony floor, blood staining the silver surface, the pain sharp but not deadly. Vaelira knelt beside him immediately, her expression no longer calm, no longer distant. "You shielded me," she said quietly, almost in disbelief. "I disrupted targeting," he corrected weakly, trying to breathe through the pain. "You placed yourself between a queen and a Carthane blade," she replied. The guard secured the remaining assassin and dragged the damaged one away, the shattered wall sealing itself with emergency energy fields. Alarms echoed across the palace now, louder than before. This was no longer rumor or tension. This was proof. The Carthane Dominion had attempted to kill the Zarethi queen inside her own capital, and they had done it the same night the human was declared her chosen mate. The message was clear. Division will be punished. Vaelira placed her glowing hand gently over Armin's wounded shoulder, energy flowing into him, sealing torn flesh slowly. "You were correct," she said, her voice low and serious. This was not malfunction. Armin forced a faint smile despite the pain. "On Earth, when systems flicker before a crisis, we call that a warning." She studied him closely, not as a symbol now, not as a political tool, but as a person who had just risked his life without hesitation. "You are physically weaker than my guards," she said softly, "yet you acted before they could." He looked up at her, eyes steady despite exhaustion. "We may be weaker," he replied, "but we don't freeze when things go wrong." Below them, the capital city's defense cannons rotated toward the sky, tracking unknown signals at the edge of orbit. The assassination attempt had failed, but it had done exactly what it was meant to do. It proved the throne was vulnerable, and it proved that the human standing beside the queen was no longer just a political risk. He was now a target. By morning, the assassination attempt was no longer secret. It was broadcast across the entire Zarethi Empire. Every colony, every military outpost, every trading station received the official report. Unknown attackers infiltrated the capital. The queen survived. One human male was injured defending the throne. And although the message did not directly name the Carthane Dominion, everyone understood who was responsible. Inside the war chamber beneath the palace, tension was thicker than armor plating. Massive holographic star maps filled the circular room, showing hundreds of systems connected by glowing trade routes and defense lines. Red warning signals blinking at the outer borders like wounds that had not yet begun to bleed. Armin stood at the edge of the chamber beside Queen Vaelira, his shoulder wrapped in advanced healing mesh. The pain mostly gone, but the memory still sharp. Around them stood the highest military leaders of the Empire, their armor darker now, their expressions colder. "The Carthane fleet has repositioned," the High Commander reported, his voice steady but strained. "They have moved 3 war groups closer to our frontier. They claim it is routine patrol rotation. It is preparation," another general said flatly. Vaelira's gaze remained fixed on the star map. "How long until they can strike?" she asked. "If they move at full speed, 5 of our cycles," the commander answered, which Armin understood meant days, not weeks. A younger officer stepped forward. "Majesty, we must respond immediately, mobilize our full armada, and strike first before they consolidate." Several others nodded in agreement, the atmosphere shifting toward aggression, toward tradition. Armin felt it clearly. This was the predictable response Vaelira had spoken about, strength answering strength, force answering force. Their goal is not immediate conquest, Vaelira said calmly, cutting through the rising tension. Their goal is narrative. Some officers frowned at the word. They want the galaxy to see instability in this union, she continued. If we strike first, they will claim we are desperate, ruled by emotion instead of order. The High Commander turned slightly toward Armin, not hostile this time, but evaluating. And what would the human suggest, he asked, the question carrying weight now after the assassination attempt. Armin hesitated, aware that every answer could change lives. On Earth, he began slowly. When a stronger enemy wants you to react fast, it usually means they have already prepared for that reaction. Several officers exchanged looks. So you suggest we do nothing, one general challenged. I suggest we do something they cannot predict, Armin replied, forcing confidence into his voice. Vaelira watched him closely, allowing him space to continue. They expect military movement, he said, gesturing to the red fleet markers on the hologram. They expect speeches, maybe threats, maybe retaliation, but what if you change the battlefield before the first shot is fired? The chamber grew quieter, not dismissive now, but curious. How? The commander asked. Information, Armin answered. Broadcast the truth of the assassination attempt across neutral systems. Show that they attacked first, expose their fear, make them look unstable. One officer scoffed lightly. Propaganda is weak compared to plasma cannons. Armin met his gaze directly. On Earth, information has started more wars than weapons, he said, and ended some without firing a shot. Vaelira stepped forward slightly, her presence reinforcing his words. If the Carthane Dominion loses political support among neutral powers, she said, their expansion becomes harder, their alliances weaker. The High Commander studied the star map carefully, then nodded once, slow but deliberate. There's logic in this, he admitted, but it will not stop them completely. No, Vaelira agreed, but it buys time before further discussion could continue. The central hologram shifted suddenly, an incoming transmission forcing itself through encrypted channels, the crest of the Carthane Dominion burning red in the center of the room. They do not even wait, one officer muttered. Vaelira allowed the transmission to open, the image of the same Carthane war leader appearing again, this time flanked by two massive armored commanders, their presence aggressive, almost theatrical. Queen Vaelira, the war leader began, his voice echoing across the chamber. We regret the unfortunate incident in your capital. Regret, the word sounded like poison. It is admirable that your human companion survived, he continued, eyes shifting briefly toward Armin. Though it would be unfortunate if further accidents occurred. The threat was clear. Vaelira did not flinch. If your dominion cannot control its assassins, perhaps it cannot control its borders either, she replied smoothly. A faint smile curved across the Carthane leader's face. Control is demonstrated by strength, he said, and strength is proven in battle. The star map behind him shifted, revealing hundreds of Carthane warships assembling in formation, far more than simple border patrol. Gasps spread quietly through the Zarethi officers. This is not a threat, the Carthane leader declared. It is an invitation. Dissolve this unnatural union, restore stability to your throne, and the Dominion will reconsider its military posture. The words hung in the air like a blade. Armin felt the weight of it instantly. This was not just about territory. It was about him. Vaelira stepped closer to the projection, her voice calm, but filled with unshakable authority. The Zarethi throne does not bend to intimidation, she said. Then prepare for consequence, the war leader replied, and the transmission ended abruptly. Silence filled the war chamber, not confused silence, but the kind that comes before a storm breaks. The High Commander turned toward Vaelira slowly. Majesty, this is no longer shadow conflict. No, she agreed, her golden eyes steady. It is open challenge. Armin looked again at the massive fleet formations gathering at the edge of Zarethi's space, his mind racing. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and politically divided. The Carthane Dominion believed that removing him would restore order. They believed humans were the weakest link. But as the red fleet markers continued multiplying across the hologram, Armin felt something unexpected rising inside him. Not fear, not panic, but determination. If they wanted proof that humanity was a mistake, they were about to get proof that humanity does not break under pressure. The Zarethi War Council expected massive fleet movement, defensive formations, and heavy weapons charging across the border. But instead, Queen Vaelira issued an order that stunned half her commanders. The main armada would not advance, it would not retreat either. It would hold position and remain visibly calm, almost passive, as if the Empire did not feel threatened at all. Murmurs spread through the chamber. Some officers thought it was bravery. Others feared it was surrender. But Vaelira's golden eyes remained steady, and beside her stood the human they now watched more carefully than ever. Armin had not slept. His mind had been racing through possibilities, Earth history, asymmetric warfare, psychological tactics, economic disruption, strategies used by weaker nations facing stronger empires, and one pattern kept repeating in his thoughts. The strongest enemy always prepares for resistance, but rarely for silence. The Carthane expect us to match their aggression, Armin explained to the War Council, standing before the massive star map. Their fleets are designed for decisive battles, overwhelming force, fast domination. That is how wars are won. One general replied sharply. On your battlefields, yes, Armin answered calmly, but not on ours. He activated a new holographic layer over the map, displaying trade routes, resource pipelines, communication relays, neutral territories, and smaller systems that depended on both empires for stability. The Dominion relies on rapid expansion, he continued. Their fleets consume enormous energy. Their supply chains stretch across unstable space. If we refuse direct battle and instead disrupt logistics, their strength becomes a weakness. The High Commander studied the map carefully. You suggest targeting supply lines, he said slowly. Not directly, Armin corrected. Indirect pressure, cyber interference, trade manipulation, alliance shifts, make neutral systems question Carthane reliability, slow their fuel access, delay their communication networks. Several officers exchanged skeptical looks. Such tactics are slow, one said. Yes, Armin agreed, but slow pressure breaks large machines, not fast strikes. Vaelira stepped forward slightly, reinforcing the idea without speaking. Armin continued, his voice growing stronger. On Earth, we learned that when facing a stronger enemy, survival depends on forcing them to fight on unfamiliar ground. And you believe the Dominion is unfamiliar with patience? The commander asked. I believe they're unfamiliar with doubt, Armin replied. That word shifted the atmosphere in the room. Doubt was not something military leaders liked to discuss. Armin expanded the hologram further, isolating 3 outer Carthane fuel depots located near contested regions. Instead of attacking their warships, he said, we leak evidence of their assassination attempt to neutral systems and simultaneously trigger economic sanctions through trade alliances. Then we quietly assist small border systems resisting Dominion pressure. We create friction everywhere at once. The younger officer who once doubted him now leaned forward. You want to make them bleed without drawing a blade. Exactly, Armin answered. Vaelira's gaze shifted across her commanders. Prepare covert divisions, she ordered calmly. Activate diplomatic channels, restrict trade access to contested territories, and reinforce defensive platforms without visible escalation. The room moved instantly. Officers transmitting commands across the Empire, fleets adjusting positions subtly instead of aggressively, intelligence units activating hidden networks. Within hours, the first ripple began. A neutral trading coalition publicly condemned the assassination attempt after receiving verified evidence of Dominion infiltration signatures. Smaller systems near Carthane space delayed fuel shipments, citing security concerns, An encrypted interference disrupted Dominion communication relays just long enough to create confusion without open declaration of war. Inside Dominion territory, minor logistical delays began to stack quietly. Fuel convoys rerouted, supply chains slowed, commanders receiving conflicting data. None of it dramatic, none of it explosive, but constant. Back in the Zarethi war chamber, updates streamed in steadily. Their Third Fleet reports navigation interference, an officer announced. 2 outer colonies have postponed military support citing resource shortages, another added. Armin watched the red fleet markers flicker slightly on the hologram, small delays appearing like cracks in a solid wall. They are adjusting, the High Commander said cautiously. Yes, Armin replied, and every adjustment cost them energy and confidence. But suspense remained heavy, because if the Dominion recognized the pattern, they would respond with overwhelming force, abandoning patience entirely. As if testing that fear, a sudden alert pulsed across the chamber. Carthane Vanguard accelerating toward our outer defense ring. An officer shouted. The red markers surged forward abruptly. They are attempting intimidation strike, the commander said grimly. Armin's heart pounded. This was the moment. Hold position, Vaelira ordered, her voice unwavering. The Zarethi fleet did not move, not even slightly. Their defense platforms remained powered but silent, no aggressive signals, no visible panic. The Carthane Vanguard advanced to the edge of engagement range, weapons charged, but something unexpected occurred. Their rear support units reported supply inconsistencies. Their communication grid lagged by seconds, not enough to cripple them, but enough to disrupt coordination. The Carthane commander, visible through intercepted channels, hesitated just briefly. That hesitation spread through their formation like a ripple. Back in the war chamber, Armin exhaled slowly. Doubt, he whispered. The Dominion had prepared for resistance, for pride, for fury. They had not prepared for a calm enemy who attacked invisibly. After tense minutes that felt like hours, the Carthane Vanguard slowed, then gradually retreated just beyond engagement range, unwilling to commit fully under uncertain conditions. The war chamber erupted in controlled relief. Not celebration, but recognition. Something had shifted. The strongest fleet in the region had paused, not because it was defeated, but because it was unsure. Vaelira turned to Armin, her expression no longer distant, no longer purely strategic. You forced them to question their own strength, she said quietly. No, Armin replied, watching the retreating red markers carefully. We forced them to question their control. Outside the palace, across the vast stars between empires, the Carthane Dominion began recalculating, adjusting, doubting. And for the first time since this crisis began, the Zarethi Empire was not reacting to war. It was shaping it. The days following the Dominion's hesitation felt like walking a knife's edge. Every decision, every command, every subtle ripple of information carried consequences far beyond what Armin could imagine. The Zarethi Empire stabilized its borders. Neutral systems began pledging discreet support. And yet, the political tension inside the palace never eased. Whispers still traveled the halls. Council members still questioned the wisdom of the human beside the queen. Armin stood on the balcony once again, this time without guards, staring at the city below, towers of silver and light reflecting the glow of the twin moons above. The capital peaceful but charged with quiet energy, the kind that warned storms were never far. Vaelira joined him silently, her presence steady, the weight of the throne pressing on her shoulders visible even in her calm demeanor. You changed the course of a potential war, she said softly, almost to herself, and yet the council still debates if your presence is right. Armin looked at her. I did what humans do. We survive. We adapt. We turn disadvantage into opportunity. Her golden eyes glimmered in the moonlight. And now the Empire watches not just your actions, but your heart, she said. A pause followed, heavy with unspoken questions. Then she spoke clearly. You have been offered a choice, human. Armin's stomach tightened. He knew she was speaking of more than ceremonial words, more than legal union. You may remain here, beside me, as my consort and co-ruler, bound to the throne and the future of this empire, she continued. Or you may return to your home planet, your species, your familiar life, and walk away for what has already become your responsibility. The words hung between them, infinite in weight, a future stretching out in two starkly different directions. Armin's mind raced. He thought of Earth, of the quiet life he once led, of the simplicity of repairing machines without empire-wide consequences. And then he thought of the Carthane dominion, of fleets waiting just beyond the stars, of empires that counted humans as weak, of countless lives already depending on his choices. You see the galaxy as fragile, and humans as fragile too, Vaelira said, but you have shown me otherwise. Human, you force me to reconsider what strength truly is. He swallowed hard, voice quiet. I never wanted this. No one ever does at first, she replied. But strength is not always about desire. Sometimes it is about necessity. Armin looked down at the city, thinking of the countless people unaware of what had almost destroyed their civilization, of the subtle networks he had helped manipulate, of the lives saved by strategies he could barely imagine in his quiet Earth office. He thought of the Carthane fleets still lingering, unsure, hesitant, slowed not by numbers, but by a human mind they had never accounted for. Vaelira reached out, placing her hand gently on his shoulder, warmth and energy flowing into him, not as queen to subject, but as ally to equal. Your choice is not only yours, she said. It is the choice of all who stand with us, and all who would see the Dominion fail. Armin's gaze met hers, steady and unflinching, despite exhaustion, despite the weight of worlds pressing down. He exhaled slowly, finally accepting the reality before him. I will stay, he said, voice firm, carrying both fear and determination. Not for glory, not for title, but because someone has to show them that humans are more than what they believe. Vaelira's smile was faint, but there was warmth there, approval, recognition, and in that instant, Armin understood the bond was not just legal, not just ceremonial, but forged in fire and survival. The palace around them seemed to breathe with their decision. Guards relaxed slightly. Advisors whispered cautiously. The city lights flickered softly like approval from the Empire itself. Yet beyond the stars, the Dominion did not pause. Recalculations continued. Fleets repositioned. But now with hesitation, uncertainty, doubt seeded by a species they had long underestimated. Vaelira stepped closer to Armin, golden energy flowing faintly around her robes. Then let it be known, she said, that the Zarethi Empire stands united, human and queen, as one. And for the first time, Armin felt not like an outsider, not like a victim of circumstance, but like a force capable of shaping entire galaxies. He looked outward, toward the stars, toward the fleets waiting, toward the fragile peace of a universe on the edge of war. And he knew, with a clarity he had never felt on Earth, that humanity was no longer the underdog. It was the unexpected, the unpredictable, the survivor. And sometimes, survival was the greatest victory of all. The final choice had been made, not just for him, not just for the queen, but for the fate of civilizations. And somewhere deep in the black silence between stars, the galaxy shifted imperceptibly, because a human had chosen to stand.